Hey, my name is Ethan. I'm 29 and I drive nights for Uber. 3 months ago, I finished dropping off this woman at her house, married, older, everything I should stay away from. And she said, "Come inside, I'll pay you there." The way she said it, her voice was shaking, and I could smell jasmine in the air, see this doorbell camera watching us like a red eye that never blinks. What I thought was an invitation turned into something else entirely. A porch light that blinked twice at 2:12 a.m., a routine that should have destroyed both our lives but somehow didn't. If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments, because I still don't know if what we did was wrong. You know the type: perfect lawns, matching shutters, porch lights that stay on like they're expecting someone who never comes home. I'd been working the late shift for 8 months, picking up drunks and insomniacs, airport runs, and emergency pharmacy trips. Clean car, 5-star smile, peppermint gum snapping between my teeth. That's how I made my living. That's how I met her. It was a Tuesday night in October, rain tapping my windshield like nervous fingers. I was idling at the mouth of Whitmore cul-de-sac, waiting for a ping when I noticed the house across the alley. Big colonial, stone columns, and a porch light that blinked twice, then went steady. Moths jittered in its halo. I watched them dance and wondered if anyone inside was watching back. My phone buzzed. Pickup at the Safeway on Elm. I pulled out of the neighborhood, windshield wipers whispering against the glass. She was waiting under the store awning when I arrived. Silk scarf wrapped tight around her neck, dark hair pulled back. She moved like someone who'd learned to be careful about taking up space. "Ethan?" she asked, checking my license plate against her phone. "That's me." I leaned over to unlock the passenger door. "Claire?" She nodded and slid in. The car filled with the scent of something expensive. Not perfume exactly, maybe hand cream or shampoo that cost more than my monthly phone bill. I adjusted my rearview mirror and caught her eyes for half a second. Green. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. 24 Whitmore cul-de-sac, she said, fingers already moving on her phone screen. I recognized the address. The house with the blinking light. The drive took 6 minutes. She didn't speak, just typed and deleted messages, typed and deleted again. Her hands shook slightly when she held the phone. I pulled into her driveway and put the car in park. Through the windshield, I could see a doorbell camera mounted beside her front door, its red light winking like an eye that never closed. She fumbled with her purse. "The app charges my card automatically, right?" "Usually, yeah, but if you want to pay cash." "I do." She looked up from her wallet. "Actually, could you come inside? I'll pay you there." The words hung in the air between us. Come inside. I'll pay you there. Every instinct I had said no. Late night, married woman, big house in an expensive neighborhood where people paid attention to who belonged and who didn't. But there was something in her voice, fear wrapped up like a request, and the way she glanced at that camera, like it was watching for exactly this moment. I turned off the engine. Her front door opened before I even reached the porch. She stepped back to let me in, but I stopped on the mat. 2 steps inside, just past the threshold, but not crossing the seam where the stone entryway met the hardwood. The foyer smelled like jasmine and floor polish. Everything was arranged like a magazine photo. Console table with a mirror above it, fresh flowers in a crystal vase, a grandfather clock that ticked loud enough to count the seconds. "I'm sorry about this," she whispered. She actually whispered, like the walls had ears. "My husband, he audits all our card statements, every charge. If he sees Uber rides at this hour..." She trailed off and pulled cash from her purse. More than she owed, but I made change from my wallet and placed it carefully on the console table. Didn't want to get too close. "I'm Claire," she said. "Ethan." The grandfather clock chimed. 2:12 a.m. Thank you for understanding, she said, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the red light on the doorbell camera. I backed toward the door. No problem. Have a good night. You too. 15 minutes later, I was back in my studio apartment, standing at the kitchen window with a cup of instant coffee. The window faced the alley behind Whitmore cul-de-sac. I could see into backyards, swimming pools covered for winter, garden sheds, and directly across from me, a kitchen window where someone had left a light on. It took me a full minute to realize it was hers. I started accepting rides that kept me close to that neighborhood. Not obvious about it, just available when pings came in from that zip code. The money was decent. Quiet streets, professional people who tipped in the app and didn't try to talk your ear off about their problems. But really, I was watching patterns. Daniel Whitmore drove a black BMW, left the house every morning at 7:15, came back most nights around 10:30. Sometimes later, Claire's porch light blinked once at 10:30 p.m., regular as clockwork, then twice at 2:12 a.m. I told myself it was just insomnia. Whoever programmed that light timer had odd habits. But at 1:58 a.m. on Thursday night, my phone buzzed. Another request from Claire. I was there in 3 minutes. She slipped into the back seat this time, hood up on a navy sweatshirt, no eye contact in the mirror. CVS on Market Street, she said, the 24-hour one. The pharmacy glowed fluorescent white in the darkness. I waited in the car while she went in, watched her through the windows as she picked up sleep aids and chamomile tea, used cash at the self-checkout. On the way back, she finally spoke. I don't usually... She started, then stopped. This is just for tonight. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. No judgment here. When we reached her house, I parked 2 houses down. Out of the doorbell camera's direct line of sight, she sat in the back seat for a moment longer than necessary. Thank you, she said again, and there was something in her voice, relief maybe, or surprise that I hadn't asked questions. Then, she was gone, walking quickly up her driveway with the pharmacy bag clutched tight. 10 minutes later, from my kitchen window, I watched the light in her kitchen snap off. Mrs. Priya Patel lived in the house directly across the street from Claire's. 62 years old, retired teacher, and the unofficial neighborhood watch captain. Every morning at dawn, she watered her geraniums and took careful note of which cars had been where overnight. I learned this when I took an airport run at 6 a.m. and spotted her making notes in a little spiral notebook. My sedan had passed through the neighborhood twice the night before. She'd noticed. That evening, I called my friend Marco. He worked dispatch for 3 different rideshare companies and knew all the policies. Hypothetically, I said, what happens if I turn off the microphone on my dash cam? Hypothetically, you can't. Audio uploads are automatic and tied to GPS. Why? Just wondering. Ethan, Marco's voice got serious. Whatever you're thinking, don't. One complaint and you're done. These companies don't mess around with driver conduct. I knew he was right, but at 11:07 p.m., Claire's porch light blinked once, then once again, and 15 minutes later, her request appeared on my screen. This time, it was different. Can you wait? She asked when she got in. There's supposed to be a storm and the power goes out sometimes. I should have said no. Should have explained that idle time wasn't billable, that I needed to keep moving to make my numbers. Instead, I followed her into the foyer again. The lights went out just as she closed the door. Total darkness, the kind that makes you forget which way is up. Oh, she breathed. Perfect. I heard her moving around, felt along the wall for my phone's flashlight. The blue-white glow lit up her kitchen just enough to navigate. She was pulling things from drawers, batteries, a small radio, emergency candles. Power company says it could be an hour, she said, checking her phone. Do you want to wait it out? I know you're not supposed to just sit there. It's fine. I set my phone flashlight face down on the kitchen counter. Emergency exception. We ended up sitting on the kitchen floor, backs against the cabinets, about 3 feet apart. Our phones provided the only light, angled like makeshift candles between us. "This house is too big," she said after a few minutes of silence. "How long have you lived here?" 4 years. Daniel bought it before we got married. Said it was an investment. She pulled her knees up to her chest. Everything's an investment to him. The art, the cars, even me probably. I didn't know what to say to that. "Sorry," she said. I don't usually, I don't talk about personal things. It's okay. The dark makes people honest." She laughed, soft and surprised. "Is that your professional opinion driver?" "Something like that." We sat in the comfortable quiet for a while. Rain drummed against the windows. Her phone buzzed occasionally with texts, but she didn't check them. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. "Sure." "I haven't felt this relaxed in months." The power came back 20 minutes later. Kitchen lights blazing, refrigerator humming back to life. We both blinked in the sudden brightness. Claire stood up first, smoothing down her sweatshirt. I got to my feet slower, aware suddenly of how close we'd been sitting, how the blackout had felt like a pocket of time stolen from the real world. "I should get you back on the road," she said, but she didn't move toward the door. Instead, she looked at me directly for the first time, really looked. Her eyes were the kind of green you see in old photographs of the Irish countryside. I took a step toward her, not planning it, just drawn. She didn't step back. We stood there for 10 seconds, maybe 15, close enough that I could see the pulse in her throat, close enough that when I leaned forward slightly, offering my forehead, she let hers rest against it. 10 seconds of breathing the same air, 10 seconds of stillness that felt like the most honest conversation we'd ever had. Then, I pulled back and walked to my car. My hands shook as I put the key in the ignition. The next afternoon, I met her on my building's rooftop. Neutral territory, public, but private enough to talk without neighbors watching. I'd brought 2 folding chairs and a thermos of coffee. She brought rules. "No house entry," she said, settling into her chair, "except emergencies." Agreed. "Daylight errands preferred. Nothing that looks romantic." I nodded. "No touching except in emergencies." She paused. "Last night was an emergency." "Was it?" She looked at me. "Yes." We sat there for an hour talking about safe things, her stepdaughter Ava, my plans to maybe go back to school. The city spread out below us, distant enough to feel separate from our problems. Before she left, she pulled out a pair of earbuds and split them between us. Some piano piece I didn't recognize, but it was beautiful, sad and hopeful at the same time. When the song ended, she packed up the earbuds and headed for the stairs. "Same time next week?" she asked. "If you want." That night, I started my shift feeling calmer than I had in months. Rules were good. Boundaries were good. We both knew where we stood. But Mrs. Patel was keeping score. I found that out when Marco called me 3 days later. "Your cloud data got flagged," he said. "Whitmore Street. You're showing recurrent idle patterns." My stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means the algorithm thinks you're camping out for drug deals or prostitution. Mix up your routes, man. Take rides in different neighborhoods. Make it random." I spent the next week being random. Airport runs, late night McDonald's trips in the suburbs, downtown bar crawls, anything to break the pattern. But at 1:59 a.m. the following Thursday, Claire's request appeared on my screen. I stared at it for 30 seconds, thumb hovering over decline. Then I accepted and drove to her house. She was waiting by the curb when I pulled up. No foyer this time. Straight into the passenger seat, seatbelt clicking loud in the quiet. Her scarf slipped off her lap as she buckled in. I reached down and tucked it into my glove compartment without thinking. 24-hour market, she said. I need chamomile and bread. At the store, we walked through the aisles like strangers, 3 feet apart. She paid cash. I waited by the door, checking my phone like any other driver, killing time. But in the car on the way back, she gripped the shopping bag handles so tight her wedding ring caught the streetlight. That cold weight of gold and diamonds that reminded us both what we were risking. From my apartment window later, I watched her eat toast alone at her kitchen table. The next afternoon, Ava was sitting on the front steps when I happened to drive past on another fare. She was 17, Claire's stepdaughter from Daniel's first marriage, tying her shoelace, backpack beside her like she'd just gotten home from school. Our eyes met through my passenger window. She raised her hand in a small wave. I shouldn't have stopped, should have driven past and pretended not to see her. Instead, I pulled over. "You're the night driver," she said, walking up to my window. Not a question. "I drive sometimes, yeah. The kind one." I didn't know how to respond to that. "Claire sleeps better on the nights you drive her," Ava said. "Before you, she'd pace the kitchen until dawn." Daniel's BMW turned onto the street just then. I put my car in drive. "Take care of yourself, Ava." "You too," she said. "You're the safe one, right?" I was 3 blocks away before I understood what she was really asking. 2 nights later, Claire's house looked different. Flowers perfectly centered on the console table. Foyer, spotless like it had been professionally cleaned. Even the lighting seemed staged. Claire spoke like she was reading lines someone else had written. "Just the CVS run tonight," she said, not meeting my eyes. "In and out." In the pharmacy parking lot, she slipped me a folded piece of paper with her payment. "No entries for 2 weeks," it read. I nodded and drove her home in silence. Watched her walk up that perfect driveway to that perfect door, moving like a woman auditioning for her own life. For 12 nights, I stayed away from Whitmore cul-de-sac except for normal traffic. Took airport runs and late-night grocery trips and rides to emergency rooms. Anything to keep my stats random and my mind occupied. But Marco's dashboard was still showing problems. "Anomalous idle pattern," he read from his screen. "If someone complains, they'll freeze your account pending investigation." What kind of complaint? Harassment, stalking, inappropriate conduct. He looked at me seriously. "Whatever you're doing, stop. Reset your phone. Mix up your trip types. And for God's sake, avoid predictable timestamps." I deleted and reinstalled the app that night. Started taking rides in completely different neighborhoods. Told myself it was for the best. But Mrs. Patel had noticed the pattern too. I found that out when I helped her carry potting soil up her front steps the following evening. She offered me tea and mentioned the nervous wife across the street in passing. "Some houses wear masks," she said, not unkindly. "The people inside them forget what their real faces look like." As I was leaving, she raised 2 fingers to shoo a cat away from her garden. The gesture was absent, automatic, but it looked exactly like Claire's porch light code. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe Mrs. Patel knew more than she was letting on. Either way, that night I parked 4 blocks away and watched the rain start at 10:50 p.m. I was finishing a ride downtown when the power grid started failing, streetlights flickering out in waves, traffic signals dead, the whole city going dark one neighborhood at a time. At 1:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. Claire's request, but no destination listed, just "no destination" in the address field. I drove to Whitmore cul-de-sac, through streets that looked like a blackout movie. When I pulled up to her house, she was standing under the portico in that same navy sweatshirt. She got in the passenger seat this time, closed the door soft and careful, like she didn't want to wake anyone. "Drive," she said. "Anywhere." So I drove, no route in mind, just away from the neighborhood and toward the hill roads that curved above the city. We sat in my car in the darkness, engine running, heater humming, watching the power company trucks work the valley below us. "He counts the door entries," she said after 20 minutes of silence. What? Daniel, the smart lock logs every time someone comes or goes. Timestamps, duration. She pulled her hood up. 2 weeks ago, he asked about a 2:12 a.m. entry. I said I'd gone out to check on a noise. And he believed you? He ordered new locks, motion sensors, lights that turn on automatically if someone opens the front door after 11 p.m. I understood then why she'd been standing under the portico, why she'd gotten in my car instead of inviting me inside. We talked about small things after that. A chipped mug she'd been meaning to replace, a squeaky hinge on the pantry door, normal domestic details that felt strange and precious in the darkness. When the power flickered back on across the city, she asked me to take her home. At 2:20 a.m., just as I was pulling away from her street, Daniel's BMW turned the corner. I watched his headlights sweep across his driveway and knew we'd cut it too close. The next morning, Daniel confronted her. I learned this 3 days later when Claire finally responded to my text with a single period, just, which we'd agreed meant pause, stop, wait. I replied, okay, and spent the weekend driving airport runs. But I kept her scarf in my glove compartment. It still smelled like her shampoo. 2 days became a week became two. My phone stayed quiet except for normal ride requests from strangers who needed to get from point A to point B without any complications. I told myself this was better, safer, the smart choice for both of us. But Mrs. Patel had started waving when I passed her house, a puzzled little gesture like she was wondering where I'd gone. And from my kitchen window, I could see that Claire's light stayed on later than usual. Sometimes, until dawn. Marco sent me a screenshot of my driver stats. Clean slate, the message said. Whatever reset you did worked. Keep it random. But at 2:12 a.m. on a Wednesday in November, the porch light across the alley blinked twice. Then, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Are you awake? I stared at the message for a full minute before typing back, yes. A location pin arrived 30 seconds later, 2 houses down from Claire's. Not her address, but close enough that I could walk to her car without passing the motion sensors. I found her sitting in the driver's seat of her own car, hood up, engine running. I borrowed Ava's phone, she said when I got in the passenger side. Daniel monitors mine. How long has he been doing that? Since the door logs showed 2:12. She put the car in reverse. He's not violent, he's just exact. Everything has to add up. We drove to the overlook above the city, the same spot where we'd waited out the blackout, but this time in her car instead of mine. Leather seats that smelled like expensive detailing, dashboard that glowed soft blue in the darkness. I can't do this anymore, she said. Not the sneaking around, not the lying about where I've been. My chest tightened. I understand. But I can't go back to eating dinner alone and pretending I'm fine with it either. She turned to look at me then. Really look, the way she had that night in her kitchen. New rules, she said. Daylight errands only, public places, coffee shops, garden centers, places where people meet for normal reasons. No more 2 a.m. drives. No more 2 a.m. drives, except, she hesitated, except real emergencies, if something's actually wrong. I nodded. How will I know? The porch light. 2 blinks means emergency. 1 blink means I'm okay. Just saying hello. We worked out the details sitting in her car as the city woke up below us. Saturday morning garden center, runs. Wednesday coffee shop meetings. Normal errands that wouldn't raise questions if someone saw us. Before we drove back, she placed her palm above the gear shift, hovering, not quite touching. I mirrored the gesture, my hand suspended an inch above hers. We stayed like that for maybe 30 seconds, close enough to feel the warmth, far enough away to maintain the boundary. Then, she drove me back to my car and we went our separate ways before the sun came up. Our first public meeting was at Morrison's Garden Center on Saturday morning at 8:10 a.m. Crowded, safe, the kind of place where a woman might run into her driver by coincidence and strike up a conversation about herbs. She laughed when I suggested basil for her kitchen window. Actually laughed, surprised at the sound coming out of her own throat. We bought seedlings and potting soil. I loaded the bags into her trunk while other customers milled around us. Everything normal, everything innocent. That afternoon, I drove 3 airport pickups and didn't think about her until evening. The routine worked for 3 weeks: Saturday garden center, Wednesday coffee at the place near the university, occasional grocery runs when she needed help carrying heavy items to her car. We were careful, professional, friendly, but not intimate. Mrs. Patel spotted us at the garden center once and smiled from across the parking lot. She didn't wave, didn't approach, just acknowledged that some things were better left alone. Then, Daniel announced a business trip that would turn into a charity gala. 3 days in Chicago. Claire would need to pack her best face and play the supportive wife for his colleagues. I didn't hear from her for 5 days. When she finally texted, a simple grocery pickup request at normal hours, she looked tired in a bone-deep way that sleep couldn't fix. "How was the trip?" I asked, loading her bags. "Educational," she said. "I remembered why I married him, and why I started taking late-night drives." In my rearview mirror, I watched her buckle her seatbelt. The sound was sharper than usual, more deliberate. "The basil died while I was gone," she said. "We can get more next Saturday." Daniel said the kitchen gets too much light anyway. Bad for the granite. I didn't respond to that. Couldn't trust what might come out of my mouth. At her curb, she paused with her hand on the door handle. "Thank you," she said, "for the normal errands, for making it feel—" Feel what? Like I still exist. 3 more weeks of careful routine. Garden center Saturdays, Wednesday coffee meetings, the occasional grocery run or pharmacy pickup. Ava started texting plant emojis from Claire's phone. Little green messages that showed up after our coffee meetings, like she was keeping score of her stepmother's good days. "She's sleeping better again," Ava told me one afternoon when I happened to pass her walking home from school. "Whatever you two talk about, it's helping." But I could see the cost of our careful boundaries, the way Claire's hand would move toward mine across the coffee shop table. Then, stop. How she'd stand just slightly too close when I loaded her groceries, breathing space we couldn't cross. One Wednesday in December, she didn't show up for coffee. I waited an hour before driving past her house. Daniel's car in the driveway, porch light dark, kitchen window showing nothing but closed blinds. That night, I parked 4 blocks away and watched for signals that never came. The next morning, I found a text on my phone. "Family dinner tonight. Rain check?" I replied, "Of course," and spent the day wondering what family dinners looked like in houses where everything had to add up perfectly. Saturday came and went. No garden center run, no text explanation. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Silence. Wednesday, I went to our coffee shop anyway. Sat at our usual table with 2 cups, hoping she'd walk through the door with some reasonable explanation. She never showed. That night, I drove past her house one more time. Porch light steady, no code, no message, just a woman in a kitchen window, standing perfectly still, like she was posing for a photograph no one would ever see. Mrs. Patel was watering her geraniums the next morning when I walked to my car. "Some cages look like houses," she said without looking up from her flowers. I stopped walking. "The key is patience," she continued, "and knowing when someone needs a door left open." She looked at me then, direct eye contact for the first time since I'd started coming around. "But you already know that, don't you?" I nodded and got in my car. Friday night, I was finishing a late dinner when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, again. "Are you awake?" This time, I didn't hesitate. "Yes." I know we have rules, but I need three dots, then nothing. I waited 5 minutes before texting back. What do you need? A friend. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my car 2 houses down from hers, engine running, heater on. She slipped into the passenger seat wearing dark jeans and a coat I'd never seen before. Drive to the bakery on 5th, she said, the one that opens at 5 a.m. It's 11 p.m. I know, but they prep through the night. Sometimes you can smell the bread from the parking lot. So I drove to the bakery, and we sat in the parking lot smelling yeast and flour and cinnamon while she told me about the family dinner that had lasted 4 hours, Daniel's business partners and their wives, conversation about proper vacation destinations and acceptable charity causes, Claire smiling and nodding and playing her part while something inside her got smaller and smaller. I kept thinking about the basil, she said, how it reached toward the window even when there was too much light, like it couldn't help trying to grow. I understood what she meant. We sat there for 2 hours, talking about small rebellions, books she read that Daniel would disapprove of, music she played when he wasn't home, the way she'd started leaving one kitchen cabinet slightly open just because she could. I'm not unhappy, she said as I drove her home. That's the strange part. I'm not miserable. I'm just not quite alive. I parked 3 houses down, as far from the motion sensors as possible. Thank you, she said, for understanding that some emergencies don't look like emergencies. After she left, I sat in my car for another hour, thinking about basil plants and kitchen cabinets and the difference between existing and living. The next morning, Ava was waiting by my car when I came out of my building. She told Daniel she went for a walk last night, Ava said without preamble, said she needed air. Did he believe her? He checked her location. Phone showed she never left the neighborhood. Ava smiled. Lucky for her, she'd left it charging on the kitchen counter. Smart girl, both of them. She's not having an affair, Ava continued. In case you were wondering, she lights up when she talks about your coffee meetings, like someone reminded her she has opinions about things. Your stepmother is a good person, Ava. I know. That's why she needs friends who see that. Winter settled into a quiet routine. Coffee meetings twice a week. Garden center runs when the weather allowed. Normal errands that gave Claire pockets of conversation with someone who listened to her answers. Daniel started traveling more. Chicago, Denver, a conference in Miami that kept him away for a week. On those nights, Claire's porch light would blink once. Not a signal, just a hello across the alley. A reminder that some connections survive even careful boundaries. Mrs. Patel started nodding when I drove past her house. Not friendly exactly, but not disapproving either. Like she'd decided I was part of the neighborhood ecosystem now. One Thursday in February, Claire showed up at our coffee shop with news. Daniel got promoted, she said, settling into her chair. Regional vice president. More travel. Better salary. Congratulations? She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. He asked if I wanted to redecorate the house, update the kitchen, make it more modern. What did you say? I said the kitchen was fine, that I liked cooking by the window. It was a small victory, but her smile was real. We talked for 2 hours that day, about books she wanted to read, places she'd never traveled, the herb garden she was planning for spring. When we parted ways in the parking lot, she brushed her hand against mine as she reached for her car keys. Just for a second, just enough to remind us both what we were choosing not to do. That night, from my kitchen window, I watched her cooking dinner, moving around her kitchen like she owned the space instead of just occupying it. Some changes happened slowly, like light returning after the longest night of winter. Spring came early that year. By March, Claire was growing basil and rosemary on her kitchen windowsill, real plants that thrived in the morning sun. Our garden center runs became more elaborate. Herb seedlings and flower bulbs tomato plants for the backyard, projects that gave her reasons to spend time outdoors. Daniel noticed, but didn't object. The garden was attractive. It increased property values. Ava helped with the planting. I'd see them sometimes on Saturday mornings, kneeling in the dirt together, both of them laughing at something I couldn't hear. One evening in April, I was walking back from the grocery store when Claire flagged me down from her front yard. "The sprinkler system is acting up," she said. "Do you know anything about timers?" I did, actually. Spent 20 minutes showing her how to adjust the programming so her herbs wouldn't get overwatered. Daniel's car pulled into the driveway just as I was packing up my tools. "Honey," Claire called out, her voice pitched perfectly casual. "This is Ethan. He helped with the sprinkler timer." Daniel approached with the careful smile of someone who wasn't sure if he should be grateful or suspicious. "I appreciate that," he said, shaking my hand. "Claire mentioned she'd been having trouble with the system." "No problem," I said. "Gardening's a good hobby." Indeed, his grip was firm, assessing. "You live in the neighborhood?" "Few blocks over." I gestured vaguely toward downtown. "I do some handyman work on weekends." It wasn't technically a lie. I'd helped Mrs. Patel fix a leaky faucet the week before. Daniel nodded and excused himself to go inside. Claire walked me to the curb, chatting about mulch and fertilizer schedules like we were acquaintances who'd had a brief, helpful interaction. "Thank you," she said quietly as I reached my car. "For the sprinkler advice?" "For being normal." That became our new normal, public interactions that had legitimate explanations. The coffee shop meetings continued, but now I was also the neighbor who helped with small repairs when Daniel was traveling. A squeaky gate hinge, a outdoor light that wouldn't stay on, simple fixes that took 20 minutes and gave us excuses to be in the same space. Mrs. Patel observed it all with the wisdom of someone who'd been married for 40 years. "Some gardens need different kinds of tending," she told me one morning when I was helping her move a heavy planter. "The secret is knowing which plants need space and which ones need support." By summer, Claire had transformed her backyard, raised beds full of vegetables, flower borders that attracted bees and butterflies, a small patio table where she and Ava had breakfast on weekends. I watched the changes from my kitchen window, the way she moved through her garden like someone who'd remembered she had a body, who'd remembered that growing things was possible. Our coffee meetings evolved too. Less careful conversation, more comfortable silence. We'd sit with our books and read separately, occasionally sharing a funny passage or interesting observation. It was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with romance, just two people who'd learned to exist in the same space without pretending to be something they weren't. One Wednesday in August, Claire didn't show up at the coffee shop. I waited the usual hour, then drove past her house. Daniel's car was gone, garden looking perfect, porch light dark in the afternoon sun. That evening, Ava texted from Claire's phone. "Emergency room, nothing serious, home tomorrow." I didn't ask for details, didn't call or visit, just waited. 2 days later, Claire appeared at our coffee shop with her left wrist in a soft cast. "Fell off a ladder," she explained, settling into her chair. Daniel was furious that I'd been cleaning gutters without calling a professional. "Were you hurt badly?" "Sprained wrist, bruised ego." She flexed her fingers carefully. "But I learned something interesting in the emergency room." "What's that?" "When they asked for my emergency contact, I gave them Daniel's number automatically. But when they asked who I wanted them to call if something happened to me," she paused, "I thought of you." We sat with that admission for a long moment. "That's probably not appropriate," she continued. "Probably not. But it's true." "Yeah," I said. "It's true for me too." Fall came with its own rhythms, shorter days, earlier darkness, Daniel traveling more as his promotion demanded longer hours and bigger responsibilities. Claire started texting more often, not requests for rides or help with repairs, just small observations about her day, photos of her garden's last tomatoes, updates on books she was reading. I'd respond with similar fragments: a sunset from the overlook, coffee shop recommendations, pictures of my own small attempts at growing things on my fire escape. It was a friendship conducted in margins, the spaces between normal life where people could be honest about what they needed. One night in October, exactly 1 year after our first meeting, Claire's porch light blinked twice. I was dressed and in my car within 5 minutes. She was waiting by the curb when I arrived. No explanation needed, just got in the passenger seat and said, "Drive to the overlook." We parked in our old spot above the city, windows cracked open to let in the cool air, engine running to keep us warm. "Daniel wants to move to Denver," she said after we'd been sitting there for 20 minutes. "Better opportunities, bigger house." My stomach dropped. "When?" "Spring, maybe summer. He's already looking at neighborhoods." "Do you want to go?" She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. "6 months ago, I would have said yes," she finally said. "New city, fresh start, bigger garden." "And now?" "Now, I know the difference between running towards something and running away from something." She turned to look at me. "I don't want to run away anymore." "So, what will you tell him?" "That I'm not ready, that I need more time to think about it." "And if he insists?" "Then I'll have to decide what kind of life I want to live." We drove back to the neighborhood in comfortable silence. At her curb, she paused before getting out of the car. "Thank you," she said, "for helping me remember who I am." "You did that yourself." "No," she said, "I might have figured it out eventually, but you made it safer to try." Winter arrived early that year. By December, most of Claire's garden was dormant, but she kept the herbs alive on her kitchen windowsill, green reminders that growing things was still possible even in the darkest months. Daniel's Denver plans progressed slowly: house hunting trips, job interviews, conversations about school districts and commute times that Claire participated in with careful neutrality. Our coffee meetings continued through the cold months. Sometimes we talked about practical things: books, current events, the mild scandal of Mrs. Patel's new fence color. Sometimes we just sat together while snow fell outside the windows. In February, Daniel accepted the Denver position. Claire told me on a Wednesday that felt like any other Wednesday until she said the words. "He wants to move in April," she said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "Before summer. So we can get settled." "How are you feeling about it?" "Terrified," she said simply. "And also relieved." Relieved? To finally have to choose something, instead of just letting things happen to me. We finished our coffee in silence. In the parking lot, she handed me a small wrapped package. "Early birthday present," she said, though my birthday wasn't for 3 months. Inside was a small potted basil plant, healthy and green and reaching toward whatever light it could find. "For your fire escape," she said. "Something that grows." 3 weeks later, on a Thursday morning, I woke up to find a moving truck in Claire's driveway. I watched from my kitchen window as professional movers carried boxes and furniture from the house, Daniel directing traffic with his usual precision, Claire supervising the packing of her garden tools. Ava helped load her own belongings into Daniel's BMW. College-bound in the fall, she'd be staying in state with her biological mother. Around noon, Claire walked across the alley to my building, knocked on my door for the first time in almost 18 months. "I wanted to say goodbye," she said when I answered. We stood in my doorway for a moment, neither of us sure what the appropriate gesture was. Then she stepped forward and hugged me, quick and careful, but real. "Take care of yourself, Ethan." "You too." She was gone by evening, house empty, porch light dark. Mrs. Patel came by the next morning with a plate of cookies and news. New family moving in next month, she said. Young couple, expecting their first baby. That's nice. Different kind of energy. She looked across at the empty house. Some people you help by staying close. Others you help by teaching them they can choose something different. I understood what she meant. The basil plant thrived on my fire escape through spring and summer. By August, it was producing enough leaves for cooking, small green reminders that some things grow when you give them the right conditions. I got a postcard from Denver in September. Picture of the Rocky Mountains, no return address. Garden is coming along nicely, it said in handwriting I recognized. Thank you for everything. I kept the postcard on my kitchen windowsill next to the basil plant. Some nights, when I'm finishing a late shift and driving through neighborhoods where porch lights glow like promises, I think about the difference between existing and living, about the courage it takes to choose growing over safety. Some people you don't take home. You drive them to the edge of the city, let them breathe, and pray the light on their porch means they made it back. Some doors stay closed, some lights stay on. And sometimes, if you're careful and patient and willing to tend the space between what is and what could be, something real grows in the margins. My phone still lights up with ride requests from people who need to get from one place to another. I drive them safely, professionally, with 5-star service and peppermint gum and no questions asked. But I keep the windows cracked a little, just in case someone needs air, just in case someone needs to remember they can breathe.